Hello from Dublin, where I'm delighted to be joined by Branchspace, a silver sponsor and exhibitor here at the co-located FTE EMEA and FTE ancillary and retailing events. So I'm joined by Ursula Silling, CEO of Branchspace, and Radu Iliescu, Head of Consulting at Branchspace. So Radu, can you begin by giving an overview of key retailing trends and how airlines are adapting to them?
Gosh, yeah, that's a big question there, and there are so many different things that I could talk about. But if I were to choose, I'll probably raise 4 points that I think are the most common themes that we see in the different airlines that we are working with. The first one is what I'll probably best describe as deep analytics and continuous optimization. And we see, honestly, every single year we see more and more sophisticated data gathering capabilities, data processing, data storage capabilities, and more and more sophisticated models for analyzing the data and extracting insights out of the data. Things that 10 years ago were seen as best practice and were only aspired to by the largest and the largest airlines were throwing the most money at it. Now it's become practically common practice and everybody's taking it for granted. Another really big trend is the gradual transition towards contextualization and personalization, and that means, historically airlines have been trying to do that and have been talking a lot about that, but not actually doing that much, not achieving that much. And now, again, we see especially the bigger players who are able to invest in new digital channels. They are also investing in contextualization of offer creation. So now we have the emergence of willingness to pay calculation, for example, which is, while it's not personalized at an individual level, it is contextualized at the level of an individual flight search. And a lot of effort being invested in the tailoring of the digital experience in particular. It's not exclusively focused on digital. In many cases now, we see also airlines investing in the tailoring and personalization of the onboard or airport experience, but still the biggest focus seems to be on the digital side and digital UIs, app behavior, web app behavior, call center, agent UI behavior, and so on. And then a really big one, probably the greatest that we see as the big theme of this year, is the transition to offer and order management. And somewhat related to that, the general trend of shifting to ever more towards omni-channel orchestration and omni-channel business capabilities. So especially the larger airlines, they are the kind of airlines that invest in adding additional retailing capabilities on top of the baseline PSS and retailing ecosystem. And those who are looking at transitioning already towards the world of offer and order management, they are also quite keen to make sure that all the capabilities that they are investing in are available at least across all their direct channels and their digital channels. Nobody seems to be paying that, and for a good reason. When we say omni-channel, we don't necessarily mean thinking about a legacy GDS or even legacy host-to-host links for interline and codeshare, but NDC and their own direct digital channels like airline.com app, again, call center agent UI, airport agent UI. The trend is to make sure that you achieve feature parity and functional parity and product parity across all those channels. I don't know, Ursula.
Maybe just to add, in addition to this, it's probably just to summarize in 3 words, to sell ultimately anything, anywhere, anytime. That's, I think, the ultimate goal of modern retailing, to have that full flexibility.
Okay, fantastic. And how does dynamic engagement enhance personalization and contribute to increased revenue?
So I think from a technical point of view, there are 2 fundamental factors that you need to achieve, and I think Ursula wants to talk more about how, what benefits that delivers in real world. But from a more functional and solution architecture standpoint, there are 2 fundamental things that contribute to this. One is the ability to filter and sort offers based on what is most relevant for a given customer in a given context. And the trend that we see here is even for airlines which haven't yet started the transition towards offer order or are in the middle of it, because let's face it, nobody has completed the transition yet. They are the trend that we see is to invest in creating a much greater number of bundles. So I don't think we are talking yet about true dynamic bundling. We are talking rather about a much larger set of statically defined bundles, if you want, or predefined bundles based on business rules, but to which we apply a level of intelligence, which is very often based on machine learning models, to determine which of those many bundles are the most relevant to be put in front of a customer. So instead of having 3 to 5 fare brands in a cabin, which is what airlines historically had, you would be looking at having 20 to 30 bundles that are defined and choosing in real time 3 or 4 or 5 out of those 20 to 30, which you are deeming as the most relevant to be placed in front of the customer. So this is one of the first major capability, and the other one, which is a lot more about the experience itself, is about having different ways of representing the digital experience. For example, having different ways of displaying an ancillary product, having different widgets even for the same channel and for the same type of device. I'm not talking here about responsive, because that I take for granted in today's world, to be honest. I'm talking about, for example, having a different way of showing the flight selection table, where you show flights and fare brands, which is tailored to different customer segments, because you have a customer segment like the business traveler who knows exactly which flights they want to get, and they don't care much about the price. They know the flight time, they know the product that they want to choose. They just want to see the best schedule for them. That's a very different way of looking at the product than somebody who is shopping, for example, primarily focused on on price, which is what I would do myself when I'm booking my summer holiday. So the ability to tailor the digital experience based on the different intents and points of focus of a customer in a given context, that's really transformational. It can have a tremendous impact, and Ursula, I think, will want to talk about that, and it's an emerging trend that we see more and more.
Yeah, I would just like to give a couple of examples what this really means, because it is really from the customer perspective and even from the airline perspective in terms of revenue actually a big step forward. So you can imagine, for example, with dynamic engagement, that suddenly you're on the day of travel, and actually it is made so much easier, because you might receive a notification, actually there is enough parking available in P5 at the airport, and this is actually very close to your departure, but just book it now easily. Or you might have simply the information, let us reserve your preferred seat 3A, and you are, or there is a 30-minute security queue actually, so why don't you buy the fast track now immediately? And so you suddenly your life gets much easier. And if you then bring AI into this, which ultimately you can enhance this with self-learning capabilities, and this can ultimately mean you could have a real one-click booking, because it could just mean that you get the booking exactly as you normally do for your flight between Dublin and London. Can we, if you want, exactly the same as you normally do, and as long as the budget is not higher than what you have booked in the last 12 months, shall we just book it exactly with all of the preferences that you would normally like? And this becomes suddenly possible.
Fantastic. And can you explain how TripLake integrates with other systems and discuss its scalability and robustness?
Yeah, let me start with this. So TripLake was actually made with modern offer order principles in mind. And This means really that it was done with a lot of flexibility in a modular way, and already with the latest technology as well. And I'm sure Radu will add some additional insight about this. And we call it AAA Connect. We have built a very powerful middleware which makes it possible to integrate with anything, whether it is third-party ancillary products or whether it is PSS systems or offer order management systems underlying. It can be anything possible, and also in a very short period of time. And it means, for example, with our customer Oman Air, we are doing just integrating more than 30 ancillaries, from the typical seat and bags up to the spa experience, in a short period of time to make this happen and realize this. And maybe Radu can add a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get all geeky here, but essentially the way we've architected AAA was, like Ursula was saying, we have an integration and orchestration layer, which is essentially a collection of Java microservices, all of them containerized, so they can be deployed easily with any cloud provider. Normally we use AWS, but there is no reason why they couldn't be deployed on another major cloud provider. The benefit of this, and then what this layer does, is two things. Firstly, it allows us to integrate into any legacy or new generation offer and order management system. And okay, I don't know if you can call a PSS a legacy offer and order management system, but essentially we can integrate into anything ranging from Altea Web Services, so the SOAP legacy web services of Altea, or Sabersonic Web, or anything like that, any legacy PSS. Or what I would say, describe as a legacy digital commerce platform, like Amadeus Digital Commerce, or DAPI as it is commonly known, or Sabre Digital Connect, or Naviter, either Naviter New Skies or .res, and actually we've integrated into quite a few of those already. Or third-party digital commerce platform as well. Or an NDC API. So essentially there is no limitation or constraint in terms of the offer order capabilities that we will be consuming. And this gives us, I think, quite a significant edge over other equivalent solutions on the market, because firstly, obviously it allows us to be completely agnostic of any system that the airline wants us to integrate with. And secondly, it's actually a major strategic safeguarding and future-proofing step for the airline to integrate a solution like ours, because it means that you are completely abstracting your digital channels from the systems underneath. And as we expect the vast majority of airlines to migrate to a completely new generation, will have to migrate to a completely new generation of systems, namely offer and order management systems, in the next 10 years. If you have a solution architected like ours, that enables you to execute this transition without having to impact in any way your digital channels and your interface with the customers. And yeah, that's basically the flexibility that our solution delivers.
Okay, and what role do monitoring and analytics play in a modern retailing environment?
Well, I think ultimately it's just about, well, there are two ways of looking at it. One way is simply achieving a better understanding of what your customers are looking for, what your customers' needs are, and tailoring then your product offering and your experience, digital experience, based on that deeper understanding. That's one way of looking at it, and I think that's probably still what the majority of airlines and probably still the majority of retailers in general are doing. There is another way of looking at it, which is probably with the emergence, probably emergence is, I'm not sure it's the right word, the increase in footprint and just the increase in how common artificial intelligence is becoming and machine learning is becoming, it probably no longer makes sense to look at the cycle of product improvement only as a matter of let's understand what people need and want, and we then go away and build what they need and want. We are starting probably to already, and I think all the technology vendors who want to stay ahead of the curve have to switch to to thinking around how you can automate continuous improvement based on automatically generated insights and essentially leveraging machine learning and artificial intelligence to automatically determine what is the best thing to do and then applying that effect if you can. This obviously requires quite a lot of re-architecting and changes in even at organizational level. You need to trust your solution to make retailing decisions and experience design decisions on your behalf as a retailer. You trust a machine to make decisions which today are taken by a human. But I believe that this is the direction in which things are heading, and what today still feels, maybe unnatural or unsafe to do without human supervision, my expectation is that soon it will become the norm. And we have architected TripLake in such a way that we can, for example, execute machine learning models automatically to apply different effects on the front end, learn from that effect, like a multi-bandit strategy, multi-armed bandit strategy, and apply effects automatically, which leads to a system that is continuously self-improving, of course, within some limits. It's within the limits of the rules that the system is allowed to experiment with. But this leads to the transformational effect that you don't even need to understand yourself anymore what people want and need. The system understands that better than any human possibly could.
It's quite exciting, and what it means in terms of value, not only customer satisfaction, retention, and effortless experience, which ultimately leads to more revenue, but also from the, just to give some examples where this can occur, and this is in line with the continuous improvement, which Radu also mentioned at the very beginning, which is a key part of the modern retailing. It can mean that the booking flow will be significantly improved, and it can sometimes be a very little thing. I think all of us have experienced that we were doing something online, we were trying to do a booking, and there was just this thing which irritated, and we couldn't immediately find how to continue, or something was wrong or didn't feel intuitive. And this is how you can actually immediately create millions of revenue, where even a 0.5% improvement, half percentage point, is a lot, and even less than that is a lot, because it is at scale in terms of revenue and can make a big difference.
Fantastic. And can you describe the process of continuous user experience optimization and how quick wins can be achieved with ongoing experimentation support?
Sure. I mean, in its traditional form, this is nothing new. It's just about, and again, I think this has now become common practice, standard practice. No major retailer, I hope, is making major design decisions without using experimentation and testing, user testing. And so it's not, at a fundamental level, it's nothing new in itself. It's about relating to a system, and in this particular case, it's about a front end, about a user interface, not as a one-off thing that you build once and then you forget about it for the next 5 years until time comes to build a new airline website, for example, but rather relating to it as a living thing that continuously evolves. It must be continuously improved, which is anyway the reality of these UIs, because airlines live in a constantly changing environment, from a regulatory point of view, from a competitive landscape point of view, from a purely commercial products and pricing point of view. So it is naive to think of a front end as something that you implement once and then you leave it there to run for X years and then you build the next version. That's not how it should work. Actually, if you look at Amazon, which I know it's abused a lot as an example, but for some good reasons, they have literally written the book on many of the best digital retailing practices. Amazon almost never makes a major change in their shop front in their website. It's almost always very small granular changes which are always tested. You have to think of it as a living thing that grows little bits and pieces here and there all the time. And the second thing is you have to think of it as a series of, it's actually a scientific research project. A digital front end should be a scientific research project in which every change that you are planning to make should be treated as a scientific hypothesis that is really just a hypothesis until it is proven either true or wrong, or false. If it's proven true, then you have decided, you have scientifically decided, quantitatively measured, that it is a positive change, it improves things. If it is proven false, you have again scientifically determined, quantitatively determined that it is counterproductive. It degrades the experience rather than enhance the experience. That's essentially the foundation of it. It's not rocket science. It's a process that is now happening all the time, all over the world. Probably the last thing I would mention here is, again, I think the next step in this is to trust our models, our science models and systems, to start making the experiments and activating the outcomes, executing the outcomes of the experiments automatically without requiring human supervision. Actually, today is not even human supervision. Today, the whole process effectively is run by humans using a set of tools. But we have actually now come to the point where the tools can work by themselves. The humans only need to outline the strategy and the tools can do the work. You don't need to go and use tool A to get the insight and then tool B to analyze that and tool C to implement a change based on that. A lot of this now, not everything, but a lot of this now can be fully end-to-end automated. And my guess is that, and actually in the wider world of retailing, so non-airline or non-travel, this has become very common. There are a lot of fashion retailers, for example, who are using entirely automated end-to-end processes for continuous optimization. And yeah, I guess the retailers who are going to make the travel retailers who are going to take the first steps in that direction, which, if I were to guess, I would guess that will be some of the big online travel agents, because they've always invested a lot more in digital technology and digital experience than airlines have. That's going to make quite a difference. And airlines, if they don't move into that, they might stand to lose.
Maybe just to add that because there is also a learning curve for the team, so we talk about modern retailing and what it entails, but obviously the teams have not been used to this, because in the legacy environment there have been very clear legacy processes to observe, and there hasn't been like this creativity of how do you approach something like this. So we've got with our Trip Lake platform, for example, we've got this inbuilt, this experimentation capabilities with our control hub. We also help clients just to set up such experiments, and that once the teams feel completely confident, they can do it on their own, or they can just, as some just decide to do, they can just continue to have it run by us, and the results can really be phenomenal. It can sometimes be the change of a color, or just an optimization of the UX experience of a payment page, which can lead to such a higher conversion rate and thus also a lot more revenue from the airline perspective. It's quite really, really an interesting subject.
Finally, can you share in what ways ancillaries can drive revenue growth and lead to the innovation of new products?
Let me start with this. So ancillaries, obviously, first of all, they really help personalization as a key part of modern retailing, because suddenly as a customer, you really have the possibility to kind of, like Lego bricks, put your journey together the way you want it to be. And whether you want to buy lounge or not, whether you want to buy fast track or whatever services it might be. As an airline, you learn a lot about your customers, even with the choices that are being made. And if I go back to what I mentioned initially, this anything, anywhere, anytime, if you went that far and you really say, I actually want to sell even beyond the flight experience, why not? It can, if we think about COVID, how useful it would have been to engage customers even beyond that flight experience. You learn a lot about your customers in that period as well. You suddenly learn about the specific brands they might like, the specific products they buy regularly, and you can propose them, and you can actually become like the place to go, the brand that accompanies you in your daily life. And so it creates additional revenue, it creates loyalty, and it also ensures actually that when you have specific flight offers, they will simply be seen and visible, and you keep in top of mind with your customers and increase revenue at the same time. Anything on my side?
Yeah, I mean, I would only just add that there is now a new holy grail that at least the more advanced airlines who are now starting the transition towards offer and order management are aspiring to, and that is the fully continuous dynamic and atomic pricing for ancillaries and for bundles. And I mean, I guess the jury is still out on how much of a benefit that will bring. But my guess is that in particular the price atomicity is going to represent quite a step change, both from an airline point of view, because we will be able to optimize pricing of ancillaries as well as right to fly at a much greater level than what we are doing today. Because the reality is that today, in particular, I mean, airlines apply very scientific revenue management to flight pricing and bundle pricing, but the bundle pricing is always done at a pre-bundled level, at a holistic level, rather than granularly component by component. And it's really amazing to me still how little of that science of revenue management, on which the airlines largely have written the book on, is actually also applied to ancillaries, even though ancillary revenue now, even for full service carriers, has become a massive component. We are talking 20% maybe of their revenue in some cases. And nevertheless, and I'm not talking about low cost, because for low cost it will be much higher than that. I'm talking about full service carriers or hybrid carriers. And nevertheless, a lot of airlines seem to be content to only do really scientifically price flights, and that 20% or 10-20% of the ancillary revenue, it's very often kind of gut feeling pricing. Of course, there are airlines who are doing it more scientifically and in a more sophisticated manner than that, but still what we see even in very large airlines is ancillary pricing is often done in a different department, is done by a different group of people, mostly based on what we've done in the past. It's this kind of we've been pricing like this, and we think now we can increase the price a bit or decrease the price of it, but there isn't actually scientific modeling like of elasticity or propensity to buy. That's usually only reserved for flight pricing, and I think that's going to represent quite a step change when we apply truly scientific pricing to not only to the right to fly, but also to all the components of a flight bundle, like seat reservation and baggage and flexibility conditions like the right to change and the right to cancel. All these should be priced based on their own demand-based bid price or floor price curve and willingness to pay calculation. So the potential for optimization there, I think, is very significant. And I mean, we talk to a lot of vendors in the industry, so we hear sometimes figures like as much as 7-8% improvement coming out of this transformation of the science of pricing. Now, I'm not sure that's always achievable. Like for a large and already sophisticated airline, 7-8% is almost, an unthinkable benefit. Imagine you are an airline which has a 50 billion euros a year revenue. 8% of that is not is already in the billions. It's 4 billion. So but it doesn't have to be 8%. Like Ursula was saying earlier, it's enough to be 0.8%. It's enough to be 0.1%, and it already makes a tremendous difference. So I think one great thing now is the cost and the complexity of implementing these solutions has dropped to the point where it is almost impossible to find transformations in the retailing technology which don't pay for themselves almost immediately. That's what people need to understand. It's not, we are no longer in the world where you need to work for months on a business case to justify an investment of a few hundreds, thousands, of a few millions. Most of these will pay like this. It's you can recover the investment sometimes in a few weeks, as little as a few weeks from the moment you activate such changes.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much to you both for sharing your insights with the FTE audience today.
Thank you. Pleasure. Thank you, Russ.